The one time I said it out loud, I was standing in my neighbor's kitchen at a quilting frolic, surrounded by women I had known my entire life. Women who had held my babies. Women who had brought food to our table when I was sick. Women who knew the sound of my voice better than anyone in the world. I said one sentence about my husband, one sentence that was nothing more than the truth, and the room went so quiet I could hear the candle on the windowsill burning down. Nobody looked at me directly. Nobody said a word back. They just picked up their needles and kept stitching, and I understood in that silence exactly what I had done, and exactly what it was going to cost me. My name is Miriam, and this is Miriam the Amish, the channel where I finally say the things my community would never allow me to say out loud. I grew up Old Order Amish in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I left a few years ago. If you want to hear the truth about Amish life from someone who actually lived it, please subscribe, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. There is still so much I have not told you. Now let me explain something that people outside my community almost never understand about what it means to be an Amish wife. There is an entire category of speech that simply does not exist for a married woman inside an Old Order community. Not forbidden in a written rule. Not listed anywhere. Just absent, the way color is absent from a room with no windows. You do not realize it is missing until the day you reach for it and find nothing there. The Ordnung, the unwritten code that governs every corner of Amish life, is precise about many things. The width of a hat brim, whether you may have rubber tires on a piece of farm equipment, the acceptable color of a buggy. What it is not precise about is speech, because it does not need to be. The rules around speech are older than any written code. They are passed from mother to daughter in 1,000 small moments before a girl is old enough to understand what she is being taught. A look across a room, a hand pressed to a knee, a particular silence that follows a particular kind of sentence. You learn the borders of what is allowed without ever being handed a map. And the border that matters most, the one I want to tell you about today, is the one around your husband. I was 22 when I married. I had watched my mother speak about my father my entire life, and I can tell you almost nothing she said, because what she said was so carefully, consistently limited, that there was nothing to remember. She praised him at the table. She deferred to him in company. She said he was a good man, a hard worker, a faithful provider. Those were the words that belonged to a wife when she spoke of her husband. They were the only words. What she never said, what no woman in my community ever said within earshot of another person, was anything that could be understood as criticism, not even gentle criticism, not even the plainest, most factual kind of observation that something her husband had done or decided had caused difficulty. That category of speech did not exist, or rather, it existed only inside the most private corners of a woman's own mind, and it stayed there, and you learned very young to keep it there, and after enough years, you stopped noticing that you were keeping it. The sentence I said that day at the quilting frolic was not dramatic. I want you to understand that. It was not an accusation. It was not the kind of thing that would have turned a single head in any other room in any other life. What I said was that my husband had made a decision about our farm that I had disagreed with, and that it had not gone the way he expected, and that I had known it would not. That was the entire sentence. A practical observation about a farming decision, spoken in a room full of women who understood farming as well as any man alive. 7 seconds of ordinary speech. The silence that followed was not ordinary. Nobody corrected me directly. That is not how it works. Nobody in my community would ever confront you in the moment, not in a room full of people, not about something like this. What happens instead is quieter and more total. The conversation moved past me the way a stream moves past a stone, smoothly, without acknowledgement, as if the stone was not there. When the afternoon ended and women began gathering their things to leave, the goodbyes were warm enough. But something had shifted in the texture of the room, and I felt it the way you feel a change in weather before the clouds arrive. I want to stop here for a moment because I think some of you already know this feeling, even if your community was nothing like mine. Please subscribe to Miriam the Amish, like this video, and turn on the notification bell, because what happened in the weeks after that afternoon is something I have carried for a long time without anyone to tell it to, and I think you need to hear it. The weeks that followed were an education in how correction works inside a community that never raises its voice. 2 women who had been regular visitors to our home stopped coming as often. Not all at once, just gradually, the way light fades in an evening, so slowly you almost convince yourself nothing has changed. A 3rd woman, someone I had considered among my closest friends, began speaking to me at church with a particular, careful warmth, the kind of warmth that has a wall behind it, and I understood that she was performing friendship rather than giving it, because giving it had become complicated. My mother-in-law said nothing to me directly. What she did was spend an afternoon with my husband the following week, and when he came home that evening, he was quiet in a heavier way than usual, and later he said, without looking at me, that he had heard I had been speaking about our household at the frolic. He did not ask me what I had said. He did not need to. The message had already traveled a full circle, without either of us having to say anything plainly, and that is exactly how the system was designed to work. I want to tell you something about what that experience taught me, because it is not what I expected to learn. I expected to feel angry. I expected to feel humiliated or afraid or silenced in a way that hardened into resistance. Instead, what I felt was something quieter and more disorienting than any of those things. I felt the size of the thing I had never been given. Not the freedom to criticize my husband, exactly, but the freedom to be a full person inside my own marriage. The freedom to say, in front of other people, that I had a perspective, that I had been right about something, that the life inside my house was mine to witness as much as it was his. An older woman in our district, someone who had outlived 2 husbands and raised 8 children, and was therefore permitted a kind of plain-spoken wisdom that younger women were not, said something to me once that I have never forgotten. She said it almost sideways, not looking at me, the way old Amish women deliver the truths they have earned. She said, "A wife who speaks about her husband is not breaking a rule. She is reminding everyone that she is a separate person. And that is the part they cannot allow." I did not understand what she meant until much later. What she was saying was that the silence required of Amish wives around their husbands is not really about protecting the husband. It is about maintaining the fiction that a wife and her husband are a single unit, a household, a shared identity, and that her interior experience of that household, her disagreements, her observations, her private understanding of what is actually true, belongs to the unit and not to her alone. The moment she speaks about him to another person, she becomes visible as a separate self, and a separate self is exactly what the structure cannot accommodate. In therapy, years after I left, I learned a term for this: coercive control through social enforcement. My therapist explained that one of the most effective ways a community maintains control over its members is not through direct punishment, but through the management of belonging. You do not tell a woman she cannot speak. You simply make it so that speaking costs her the relationships she depends on. You make silence the price of connection, and you do it so consistently, from such an early age, that by the time she is a grown woman sitting in a quilting room, she already knows the cost before she opens her mouth. She has simply forgotten that she knows it, because she has never tested it before. I tested it once. 1 sentence about a farming decision. 7 seconds of ordinary speech. and the room went quiet in a way that took months to fully recover from. I do not tell you this so that you will think my community was monstrous. Most of the women in that room were people I loved. Most of them were operating inside the same silence I had been operating inside, doing what the system had taught them to do, which was to protect the structure by withdrawing warmth from anyone who threatened it, not out of cruelty, but out of the deep, unexamined belief that this was what faithfulness required. If you grew up somewhere that taught you your observations about your own life were not yours to share, I see you. If you have ever said one true thing in a room full of people and felt the temperature drop, I see you. If you learned so early to keep your interior experience private that you forgot it was a choice and began to believe it was simply your nature, I see you. You were not too much. You were not disloyal. You were a person trying to be witnessed inside a structure that had decided your witness did not belong to you. If this story opened something in you, please subscribe to Miriam the Amish, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what comes next. There is still so much I have not said. Until next time, choose your freedoms wisely. They might just save your life.